Welcome. So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about expressing a quantity as a proportion. So you've either printed off these notes or you just have a blank page in front of you and you're just going to be following along with me as I fill out this entire document with you. So you just got to watch this video and follow along with me. So it couldn't be simpler. All right, let's begin. So it says, express the following proportions as both a fraction and a percentage of the total. So we have $40 out of a total of $200. Well, how can I express this as a fraction? I have $40 out of $200. And just like that, I've expressed it as a fraction. But what do you always have to make sure you do when you have a fraction? You must make sure that you simplify it. So how can I simplify this? Well, I could divide this by 10 and divide this by 10. And remember, when you're dividing by 10, the easiest way to go about this is 40 divided by 10. Well, that's just 4. So I can just cross out that 0, and 200 divided by 10 is just 20. So I can cross out that 0. And remember, we've seen this before. The easiest way to simplify when you got zeros at the top and zeros at the bottom is just go this 0 goes away with this 0. They cancel with each other. So once I've done that, now I have 4 up the top and 20 down the bottom. What can I simplify those down to? Well, I could divide the top and bottom now by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 20 divided by 4 will be 5. So after all of that, I'm left with 1 up the top and 5 down the bottom. So a simplified fraction is going to be 1 on 5. So that's how I would do it. So again, it's really important that you become familiar and comfortable with simplifying fractions in this way. And that's the best way to go about it. Perfect. We've written our answer as a fraction. But remember, the question also said that we had to write it as a percentage. So how are we going to go about that? Well, we know what the fraction was. The fraction we started off with was 40 over 200. And we know that if we want to create a percentage from this, if we want to convert this to a percentage, what we're going to do is times it by 100 over 1. That's how we make it into a percentage. And now, before we multiply, we simplify. And remember, we're going to use our cancelling zeros method. So this 0 will go away with this 0. This 0 will go away with this 0. And then, once I've done that, is there anything else I could simplify? Well, I've got 40 and I've got 2. Both of those are divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 40 divided by 2 is going to be 20. And remember, you don't have to actually write divide by 2. As long as you know what you're dividing by, that's fine. So after all of that, what am I left with? Well, I've got 20 here. I've got 1 down the bottom times, I've got 1 here and 1 here. 20 times 1 is 20. 1 times 1 is 1. So that means I'm left with 20%. And that is my percentage. So I've answered this question. I've given it the 2 things that it wanted. The first thing it wanted was a fraction. That's a pretty ugly box. Let's try that again. And the other thing it wanted was a percentage. And we achieved both of those. So make sure you're simplifying. Make sure you're following these processes here. Let's now move on to our next one. You might like to pause the video and see if you can do it for yourself. All right, hopefully you gave it a go. It says 24 green ducks out of a total of 30 ducks. Well, I've got 24 green ducks out of a total of 30 ducks. So there it is right there is my fraction. But remember, you can't leave it like this. You have to simplify it. So how am I going to simplify this? Well, both of these can be divided by what? Well, they can both be divided by 6. 24 divided by 6 is 4, because 6 4s are 24. And 30 divided by 6 is going to be 5. And now, once I've done that, what I can do next is just say, well, it's going to be equals 4 on 5. And that is my fraction. But remember, I also need to show my answer as a percentage. So I'm going to go 24 on 30. I begin with the fraction. Then I multiply it by 100 over 1. That's how I'm going to get my percentage. Remember, the best thing that you can do here when you're simplifying is that this 0 will go away with this 0. And is there anything else here I can simplify? Well, there is, because I've got 3 and 24. Both of those are divisible by what? They're divisible by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So that means, after all is said and done here, what I'm left with is 8 on 1 times 10 on 1. That's going to be 8 times 10 is 80. 1 times 1 is 1. And 80 over 1 is just 80%. And there is my percentage. Percentage. So I'm finished. I have found what I wanted. I found this, my fraction, and I found my percentage. So hopefully you found these two questions manageable and the way in which we approach them. Perfect. Let's keep on moving now. Let's move on to this question here and see how we go with it. All right, again, feel free to pause it and give it a go for yourself and see how you go with it. It says, a glass of cordial is 1 part syrup to 9 parts water. So 1 part syrup to 9 parts water. And you can see what that looks like here. I have 1 part syrup and then 9 parts of it are water. So 9 parts. So all that is 9 parts are water. You can see all together it has 10 parts. And that makes sense because there's 1 part syrup, 9 parts water. All together, that's 9. 1 plus 9 is 10. Did I say 9? I meant 10. All of that together is going to be 10 because 1 plus 9 is 10. So it's going to say express the amount of syrup as a fraction of the total. Express the amount of syrup as a fraction of the total. Well, the first thing we're going to do is let's just write down what our total is going to be. Remember, our total is going to be the 1 part syrup, so 1 plus the 9 parts water. 1 plus 9 is, drum roll, 10. So now when I'm entering A, and it's saying what is the syrup over the total, well, my syrup is 1. There's 1 part syrup. And how much is the total? Well, the total is 10. So my answer to the first part here, and that's a funny looking 1. Let's just do it normally, or 1 like that. My first answer here is just going to be 1 on 10. Just like that. Let's now go on to part B, which says express the amount of water as a percentage of the total. So express the amount of water as a percentage of the total. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just consider what is water over the total, right? Because it's saying water over the total. So water is 9 parts and the total is 10 parts. So that's 9 on 10, but it doesn't want it as a fraction. It wants it as a percentage. Now, what is 9 on 10 as a percentage? Hopefully you all know that's just 90%. Nothing too tricky there, but if you were struggling with it, remember the way that you figure out what a fraction is as a percentage is you multiply by 100 over 1. You then simplify. This 0 will die with this 0, which means I'm going to be left with 9 times 10 over 1 times 1. 9 times 10 is 90 over 1 is 90%. But again, you should be able to look at that 9 on 10 and just say it's 90%. And that's how you do it. That is how you do it. All right, here is now a similar question. I want you to pause the video and give it a go for yourself. See how you go with it. Don't just watch me. So pause it, give it a go, and then watch me do it. All right, hopefully you paused. A mixture of cordial is 2 parts syrup to 3 parts water. So we can picture this. We can picture that we have a glass. Here is my glass. Very good. And it has 2 parts syrup. So let's put our syrup in. We'll use this color right here. This is my syrup. And it's 2. So 2 represents the syrup. Syrup. And then I have 3 parts of water. What color will I use to represent water? You guessed it. Blue. There is my water. 3 water. Let me just make my picture a bit more nice. All right, now it says, express the amount of syrup as a fraction of the total. Well, what is the total going to be? Well, my total is going to be my 2 parts syrup. Well, that's 2 parts syrup here. So 2 plus my 3 parts of water. 3 is here. 2 plus 3 is 5. So that's the total I have altogether. And that makes sense. 2 and 3, there's 5 parts altogether. So now when I'm trying to figure out the amount of syrup as a fraction of the total, that's going to be this syrup over the total. My syrup is 2. My total is 5. So that means it's going to be 2 on 5. And that's going to be the answer to my first one there. Next, the next thing we have to do, B, it says express the amount of water as a percentage of the total. The first thing I'm going to do is just figure out what the fraction of the water over the total is going to be. Well, my water is 3 parts, so it's going to be 3 on my total, which is 5 parts, so it's 3 on 5. But remember, it wants it as a percentage. So how do we turn a fraction into a percentage? Well, one way to do that is to multiply it by 100 over 1. And now I'm going to simplify this. I can simplify this way, diagonally. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 100 divided by 5 is going to be 20. And that's just something you have to memorize. And now what we have is 3 on 1 times 20 on 1, which is going to be 3 times 20, which is 60 on 1 times 1 is 1. So that means we're going to end up with 60%. And that's going to be our answer there. There is another way to approach this. So let's just highlight my answer there. Another way to go from a fraction to a percentage, we learned about this in our last lesson, is if we're starting with 3 on 5 and we want to figure out what this is going to be as a percentage, we could multiply so that our denominator becomes 100. If we were to do it this way, where's my purple? There it is. 5 times what gives me 100? Well, it's going to be 20. And whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So 3 times 20 is, wait for it, 60. And 60 over 100 is 60%. So that's another way to do it to get the same answer. As you can see, you both got 60%. So whether or not you're doing it through equivalent fractions, trying to get your denominator to 100, or you just multiply it by 100, you're getting that same result of getting that percentage that you want. Perfect. There is the second page of your notes all completed. So hopefully you watched all of this and you followed along either in your book or taking notes here. Now we come to your homework. This is going to be your homework, and guess what? Because I'm not here with you going through this lesson, I'm going to go through this with you. I'm going to go through your homework with you. So there's going to be no excuse if you are struggling with this content, because I'm going to go through it with you now. So again, if you would like to, you could pause the video and just double check as you're going, or if you're still feeling a bit shaky on this material, you can just watch me do it, but then sooner or later I want you trying it for yourself. All right, let's read. It says question 1, express the following proportions as both a fraction and a percentage of the total. All right, the first one we have here is we're first going to represent our answer as a fraction, because that's what it's asked. And we have $30 out of $300. So that means it's 30 out of 300. Now we have to simplify this. Remember, the best way to simplify when you've got zeros at the top and the bottom is just cross out the zeros. That's the best way to do it. So now what we have is 3 on 30, because we crossed out that 0 and we'll cross out that 0. Then once we've done that, is there something I could simplify this further down into? And there absolutely is. I could divide the top by 3. I could divide the bottom by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And 30 divided by 3 is 10. So that means what I'm going to be left with here is 1 on 10. Just like that. And that is going to be my fraction. So I have simplified it. Let's give that a highlight. And we have answered the first part of this question, which wanted me to give my answer as a fraction. Let's now answer it as a percentage. So remember, when you want to find the percentage of something, the best way to actually do this is just to take the fraction that we found here, 1 on 10, and it would be really good if you just knew off the top of your head that 1 on 10 is simply 10%. This is something that you should just memorize. You shouldn't have to do any maths to get that. You should just know that 1 on 10 is 10%. Now, if you were struggling and you didn't know that, we could go through the method to help us. So this is an alternative way to go about it. Remember, one way that you could do this is you could say, well, I just need to create an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100 to find the percentage. And to do that, what I would have to do is multiply this by 10, because 10 times 10 is 100, and multiply the top by 10. And 1 times 10 is 10. So that means I'm going to get 10 on 100, which is just 10%. Because remember, a percent just means out of 100. And there is one more way to do this. I might need a bit more space here with the power of technology. Let me shrink this down a bit. The other way to do this, so this is the best way to do it. This is another way to do it. The final way to do it is to take 1 on 10 and then multiply it by 100 over 1. And then once you've done that, you're then going to simplify what you have here. So remember, this 0 will cancel with this 0. And then you just multiply across. So I'm going to get 1 times 10 is 10. And 1 times 1 is 1. And I'm going to be left with 10%. And as you can see, I get the same answer each time. So regardless of which technique you use, whether or not you're creating equivalent fractions or multiplying by 100, you're still going to get to the same result. As you can see, 10%, 10%, 10%. So it really doesn't matter which way you use. But at the end of the day, you should just know that 1 on 10 is just 10%. All right, let's move on to our next one here. Our next one is 15 sheep out of a total of 25 sheep. So let's begin by writing this as a fraction. And again, you should pause the video and see if you can do this for yourself. I'm going to say that this is 15 out of 25. And then you have to simplify this. My goodness, how are you going to simplify this? Well, you have to think, what number can I divide both of these by? And I can divide them both by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 25 divided by 5 is 5. So that means my final answer here is going to be 3 on 5. 3 on 5. Perfect. Let's now go on to my next one, which is finding the percentage of it. Now, there are various different ways you could go about this, okay? So I'm going to show you the different ways of approaching it. And that's what makes maths tricky, but it also makes maths rewarding as well, because there are multiple ways to go about it. I could start off with the original fraction that I started with, 15 on 25. And I think what I would do is I would say, well, how can I make this have a denominator of 100? And the way that I could achieve that is by multiplying this by 4 and multiplying this by 4. And if I was to do that, if I was to multiply those by 4, what I would end up with is 15 times 4, and 15 times 4 is 60. And 60 on 100 is going to be 60%. And I think that's the best way to approach this question, to do it like that. So I used this fraction here, 15 on 25, because I knew that it's pretty easy to make that into 100. Now, there is other ways to do this. Let me show you another way now. The other way to do this is to start off with the fraction 3 on 5, so the simplified one that I found here. And we could create an equivalent fraction again if we wanted to. So if we were to do that, let me grab this color here. Remember, what I'm going to be doing is trying to make this out of 100. So now I'd have to ask myself, all right, 5 times what gives me 100? And that means I would have to times it by 20. And then 3 would have to be times by 20. 3 times 20 is 60. Whoopsie daisy. So that means I'm going to get 60 on 100, which is 60%. So as you can see, there is another way of doing it. And again, if you wanted another way, you could multiply 3 on 5 by 100 over 1. That would be another way again. But I don't want to give you too many ways, otherwise we would literally be here all day. But it's really good that you just start building up a confidence with how to answer these types of questions. And the only way to do that is through repetition. And that's why, as we come down here, we have more questions. So again, you should pause the video and see if you can do these for yourself. You shouldn't just be watching me do all of these things. So pause it and see how you go. So we've got 2 kilos out of a total of 40 kilos. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is find what the fraction is going to be. And the fraction here is going to be 2 out of 40. 2 out of 40. Let me see if I can write that a bit neater, shall we? 2 out of 40. Then you're going to simplify. So what can both of these be divided by? Well, both of them can be divided by 2. So I'm going to divide this by 2. I'm going to divide this by 2. So this is going to become 1, and 40 divided by 2 will be 20. So that means what I'm going to be left with here is 1 on 20. 1 on 20. So I've written it as a fraction. So let me highlight that. 1 on 20. Now, I also have to write this as a percentage. Percentage. How could we do this? Well, what I might do here is I might start with 1 on 20, and I might see if I could make it have a denominator of 100. And that might be a good way of approaching this. So let's give that a go. Let me come and grab my purple. 20 times what would give me 100? Well, I would have to times it by 5. And that means I have to times the top by 5. And 1 times 5 is, wait for it, 5. So that means my answer is going to be 5%. Now, I want to show you an alternative way of getting this 5%. So another way that we could have done this is we could have started with 1 on 20 again, but maybe instead of trying to find an equivalent fraction with 100, what we do instead is multiply by 100 over 1. And this is going to give us the same result. So if we were to do this, we would then simplify 20 divided by 20, because I can divide this by 20, and I can divide this by 20. 20 divided by 20 is 1, and 100 divided by 20 is 5. Let me just rub those off. So this is 1 down here. And then we're just going to multiply across here. So I'm going to go 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 1 is 1. And guess what? That's 5%. So as you can see, I'm getting the same result, which is fantastic. All right, let's keep on moving here. We have 30 mils out of a total of 200 mils. So let's begin by writing this as a fraction. So this is 30 out of 200. Now we're going to simplify this thing. Now remember, when you got zeros up the top and zeros down the bottom, the best thing you can do is cross out your zeros. Now 3 and 20, can that be simplified any further? No, it cannot. Nothing is divisible by both of them. So that means my final answer is just going to be 3 on 20 for my fraction. And let's give that a highlight. Highlight, highlight, highlight. But we're not done yet. We now need to find this as a percentage. Percentage. To find it as a percentage, what we're going to have to do is take 3 on 20. Actually, there's multiple different ways we could do this. So again, I'm going to go through multiple different ways. I could take 3 on 20, and we could, what do you want to do here? There are multiple different ways. You might want to do a different way. Let's multiply it by 100 over 1, shall we? Let's. If we were to do that, I would then simplify this way. 20 divided by 20 is 1. 100 divided by 20 is going to be 5. And that means what I'm going to end up with here is 3 by 5 is 15, and 1 by 1 is 1, and then 15 on 1 is going to be 15%. And that would be my answer, 15%. Now, there are other ways of approaching this question. Another way that I was thinking of doing it, which it would be pretty cool, is I could start off with my original fraction, which was 30 on 200. And what I could do is say, well, how could I make my denominator 100? So how do I go from 200 to 100? And you might be thinking to yourself, remember, you can only times or divide. So obviously I'm going to have to divide because I'm getting smaller. I would have to divide the top and bottom by 2. What's 30 divided by 2? 30 divided by 2 is 15. And guess what? That's 15%. Isn't maths fun? The answer to that is yes. There is no other answer. Perfect. All right, we've done a whole bunch of questions there. Let's now continue. Now, my computer gets kind of funny when it starts to record for too long, and I've recorded for 23 minutes. So if at any moment this thing just crashes, you know why. My computer just got too tired. All right, I want you to read this question and see if you can answer it for yourself before I answer it with you. So read the question and see how you go with it. All right, so how did you go? It says a jug of lemonade is made up of 2 parts of lemon juice to 18 parts of water. All right, it says express the amount of lemon juice as a fraction of the total. So you might like to picture a glass, or it's a jug in this case. So I suppose it has a handle. Actually, that will make my drawing look too ugly. And it has 2 parts lemon juice. All right, so let me grab this. This is my lemon juice. And there's 2 parts of it. So 2 lemon. It's kind of hard to see the yellow, but we need to do it in yellow because it's a lemon. And then we've got 18 parts water. Let's grab this. That's a lot of water. It has a lot more water, doesn't it? 18 parts water. So 18 water. Then the question is asking us, let me grab the black, express the amount of lemon juice as a fraction of the total. So it wants me to write a fraction, and the fraction needs to be the lemon juice over the total. Well, what is my total going to be? My total is going to be 2 lemons, so 2 plus my 18 water, which is going to be 20. So my total is 20, and my lemon is 2. It's going to be 2 on 10. Can that be simplified? Absolutely it can. I could divide the top by 2 to get 1. I could divide the bottom by 2 to get 10. So that means what I'm going to be left with here is 1 on 10. Perfect. Let me give that a highlight and we will move on. We're going to come to this one. It says express the amount of lemon juice as a percentage of the total. Or actually, we're gonna have to go back to this one because it's the follow on. Express the amount of lemon juice as a percentage of the total. Lemon juice. Well, we've already figured out that it's 1 on 10, haven't we? We know that lemon over the total is 1 on 10, and again, hopefully, you can just see 1 on 10 and say, well, that's 10%. I do not know why I left so much space for this question. You do not need that much space. You could do this pretty quickly, couldn't you? Just 10%, just like that. If you're struggling with it, remember there are multiple different ways for you to do it. You could say, well, how can I make my denominator 100? Right? How can I make my denominator 100? And one way to do that is to multiply. Well, the only way to do that is multiply by 10, isn't it? And that means I get now a 10 up the top. So I'm going to get 10 on 100, which is 10%. Just like that. And as you can see, I get the same answer. 10%, 10%. Perfect. All right, we're going to come down here now. And we have this right here. It says a mix of concrete is made up of 1 part cement to 4 parts sand. All right, we're going to see if we can do this one without a drawing. It says express the amount of cement as a fraction of the total. Well, my total here is going to be the cement plus the sand. So 1 plus 4, which is 5. So now if I wanted to write this as a fraction, it needs to be the cement over the total. That's not how you spell total. Total. My cement is 1. My total is 5. So I have 1 on 5. Next it says express the amount of cement as a percentage of the total. Okay, so what are we going to do here? I know that I'm dealing with 1 on 5 because that's the cement over the total. And then if I want to get this to be a percentage, what I'm going to have to do is let's multiply it by 100 over 1. Again, you could create an equivalent fraction if you wanted to, but let's just mix it up here. I'll divide this both by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 100 divided by 5 is going to be 20. So that means after all of that, I'm going to be left with 1 times 20, and 1 times 1, which is 20 on 1, which is, drumroll, 20%. And that's going to be my answer, 20%. All right, let's go on to these questions here. All right, it says, express the amount of sand as a fraction of the total. Well, I have to go back and look at the original question here because I had 4 parts sand. So my fraction is going to be, I have 4 parts sand. So let me write, I'm doing sand over the total. And for the sand, I have 4 parts over a total of 5. And then it wants me to write it as a percentage. So I've got 4 on 5. Now, hopefully you can figure this out without doing too much conversions here. Because if this is 20%, what is the remaining amount of percent that I have? I know without doing, well, I am doing a bit of maths, but I know straight away that if it's 20%, this has to be 80%. Because I know that 20% plus 80% is 100%, and that's what I'm trying to add up to. That's what percentages have to add up to. They always have to add up to 100. So I know that the remaining is just going to be 80%. But let's say you were struggling in, you weren't quite sure how to do this. Well, you could just multiply by 100 over 1. And then you could simplify this. You could go 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. And then you could multiply across here. So you'd go 4 times 20 and 1 times 1. 4 times 20 is going to be 80. 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer is going to be 80%, which is what we said. All right, there we go. There we go, 80%. And guess what? We have now finished this entire worksheet. It took us 30 minutes. It might have taken you a bit longer because you're pausing the video and writing things down. This is going to be the first part of our lesson. There will be a second part as well. So hopefully you get this done. There's no excuse not to do it because you've got a whole video of me going through not only the notes, but also the working out, the homework. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to finish this off and then upload it and then go into the second part of this lesson. So hopefully you've enjoyed this and it makes sense, and I'll see you in the next part.